Morning, everybody. How's it going? We got channel members Hugh, Mark, Dan, Rob, Joseph, Logan, Ivan, Will, Craig, Ed, Diane, Scott, Matt, Don, Cliff, Sergio, B, Ted, Frank, Mary, Jason. Good to see everybody. And all my normal subscribers, welcome to the channel too. Thank you for being here. Can't do it without you. And yesterday, just kind of churning a little bit. Churning, burning. Guess what? Look at this craziness right here. We set a new record. Set a new record. Is this something to be proud of? I don't know. We've got more housing inventory listed on the market than we've ever had before. That's interesting, right? Way more than during the GFC. Right here, $700 billion unsold. Now, you could be like, well, a house that was $200,000, $300,000 in 2019 is now worth like $1 million, $1.5 million, depending on the market you're in. Yeah, that's a little crazy too, but those inflated housing prices, that bubble might pop here. Interestingly enough, right here, we were seeing that what caused all that housing to increase in price was right here, that squeeze in supply. But now we have an expansion in supply on the markets. And that's just, listing value. Now, effective rate of interest on mortgage outstanding in the dark color down here, 4.5. And then we have bankrate.com's 30-year fixed mortgage average right now, almost 7%. We just came off 8% back there in late 23, early 20, right in coming into 24. This hasn't really dropped though. This is at multi-decade highs we haven't seen since, gosh, I guess turn of the century, really. And I was trying to think of a funny thing to say, but blank. Too early in the morning. Anyway, so how does this resolve? Where do we get the buyers if, buyers aren't going to come flooding in now? We've been used to this for a long time. Getting used to this is, and this looks like a leg up and a correction. Now, is this the bubble pattern, or is this going to be just the first move up and then another leg higher? Based on all the things happening, this could be another leg higher. And the other risks to this whole thing, who controls mortgage-backed securities in the United States? Now, everybody says China owns the debt. China doesn't own the U.S. public treasury debt. China owns mortgage-backed security debt. They own the mortgages, a large percentage of the mortgages. They get done by small companies, they get packaged up and resold to Chinese investors or China central bank. I don't know. And so right now, if we start down a default path, guess who owns all the properties? Dun, 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 China. Now, this is interesting too. The biggest dip on record since COVID in total U.S. construction spending. They keep talking about how all this housing is coming online, but actually, when you do the numbers, even with inflated prices, we're seeing a big dip in construction spending. We saw about 3 months down back here in 2020, and we've already had 3 months down here in 2025. And it seems to be accelerating. This is another one of those problems that's coming ahead. And how do we resolve it? Big correction in house prices. maybe. We saw that during the great financial crisis. Lots of defaults and kind of a repricing. So unfortunately, if you were forced to buy or you decided to buy at the high prices, you may be stuck there for 10, 15, even 20 years while the housing market corrects this back out and then comes back up. It's one of those interesting things. Everybody says, real estate does way better than the market, but not really. When you take all the costs of maintenance and all that into consideration for real estate, usually it returns about 5% a year is the solid big picture numbers that I've looked at. And that's like from people that manage thousands of properties. Like usually it returns about 5% a year. Now you could be, if you're good at it and you can pick an area that's up and coming and you could do really well, but 5% a year. And the stock market average 7 to 9%. And that's just if you're in a broad index like the S&P. Of course, we do get big pullbacks, 10% this year, 20%. And but then you look at something like this, I'm already up almost 5% since I started this right here in just a month and a half. That's not bad. Just a month and a half, I'm up almost 5% on my money. And I'm not slowing down. And you're like, well, where's the losses? It hasn't, out of almost 40 trades I've been in and out of, 100% win rate so far. I know a little bit about what I'm doing right there. This is part of the 50K challenge. The challenge here, if you're new and haven't seen this, the goal is to get this 1 month number up to $50,000. Do I have ways to go? Absolutely. It's funny when you look at it right here, it says 2,646 right there in the bubble. But when you look at it on my Robinhood account, it says about $3,400. That's just where the 30-day window is, I guess, and how you account for it. So it's interesting. Now, 3 month, this number will climb to 150K when we get to the goal. So this is going to be something I'm talking about for the next couple of years. All right. This is not just today, just tomorrow. I'm not getting there next week. I'm not getting there probably not even next year. But I'm working on it and we're going to get there. This is a personal mission of mine to build taxable income of $50,000. You may be like, well, why don't you put it in an IRA? I've got tons of money in IRA. I'm IRA rich. I'm actual income that I can use and pay for things poor. So I'm trying to build a reliable. And this is the key right here. It's not just trading. People are like, well, you're making such a low return. Why don't you go for some of these big wins that you do all the time? And yeah, but those are high risk, high risk of loss, high reward type things. They're not repeatable necessarily. So if you want to follow along, here's the link for K-Info. If you want to go verify what I'm doing, these are all verified every night by K-Info. Every time I close a trade, they download it off my Robinhood account and verify it. I'm not logged in, so you can't see every trade's on here though. And we can see last week, actually we booked a bunch of trades on Friday. It just, the way they put them on the days is kind of weird. But you look at the profit, there you go. Since we started right on tax week, and that's what we got cooking. With any luck, by the end of this week, this number is going to be, instead of being 42.43, it's going to be about $1,150 higher. So roughly, whether it be $53.90, roughly. That'd be pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. We're gonna have a outsized week this week, I think. Nice. Anyway, that's pretty cool. Now, so I give kind of daily updates to channel members, and I didn't post one yesterday because there was no update. I didn't change anything from Friday. Nothing closed, nothing open, nothing really changed. So I didn't post any update. I post those daily updates if you're a channel member. So if you want to get those, you can. If you want the trades when they happen, as they happen, with all the explanation, all the, and you can ask questions, Turnbuyer Trading Lab is the only place I do that. So just thought I'd go through all that. It's one of the ways that I'm trying to set me and my family up. And I'm taking everybody on a journey with me to doing this, like showing you how I do it. The question ever since I became a guru was, why don't you show us a whole portfolio management? How do you manage your entire portfolio? So, yeah, K-Info just shows closed trades. Like it just, when I close them, it shows them as verified. And while if you read the documentation in the FAQs in K-Info, it says very adamantly they don't want anybody shadow trading, so they don't show real-time open trades necessarily. So there you go. But I do show you my real-time open trades in the, for channel members. I show you all the open orders, basically every day when I make any changes, and just kind of a brief overview of what I changed. Alrighty. So on a mission, and this thing is rocking and rolling. And just in case you wondered how I'm doing, 3 month, I don't have enough trades for a year or all time yet. Average gain, I'm right up in here in the top, number 6 for 3 months. And I only have like a month and a half of profit here. Look at that. Negative, negative, negative. Doing a little better than me. Doing a little worse than me. And 4K. And look at the winning trades. I'm right up in there, number 2 for the 3-month leaderboard. 100% win rate. Just in case you wondered, if I maintain 100% win rate, I'm going to be on top. And my all-time has losses, so I'm not going to be on top here. I'll probably, when I hit that, I'll probably be down here, somewhere around 90%. Because I used an account that had some losses. So, there we go. I think it's, it's an interesting thing. And if you want to know more about it, come join us. Anyway, S&P 500 getting a little touch of green here this morning. This is still a lower high. Now, I did mention last week that S&P 500 cash index and the futures have set up some sort of diverging pattern here. They're not on the same pattern. Now, if this taps a higher high, then we had it right back here, all of a sudden it resolves the difference between them. So this big thing right here may have just been a wave 4 correction. We go tap a higher high, and then we start that correction. So nothing resolved, nothing, everybody's like, when's this big down coming? It's coming. It's just a waiting game. Probably not today, probably not tomorrow, but soon. Soon. Now, whenever S&P cash and futures diverge in their pattern, and they're doing 2 different patterns, they always resolve it before they make the next big move. So when these 2 resolve this pattern, that's when you need to be cautious. And that could happen. Now, it doesn't have to resolve either. We could just go down and screw everybody. So S5TW, just checking back in on the barometer here. We did bottom down here. Look at this. Wow. All the way down to the 40s. This is probably coming down to the bottom. It's a giant market oscillator. We spent a couple of weeks up at the top. We'll probably go down to the bottom before we come back up to the top. It's the way this works. If you're like, how do I look this up? Go to tradingview.com, or I think it's Big Charts or whatever it's called, barchart.com. You can type in S5TW, Sierra, number 5, Tango Whiskey, and pull it up. And this is the number, or the percentage of S&P 500 stocks above their 20-day moving average right here. It's a giant market oscillator. We go from the top to the bottom, to the bottom to the top. you know, sometimes we take these big dips before we come all the way to the bottom. So we can hit multiple times on the top. Could we do that right now? Yeah, it's possible. Possible. Not usually very likely before we make it all the way back down to the bottom vicinity, but it's possible. S5 FI, Sierra 5, Sierra number 5, Foxtrot India. This is stocks above their 50-day. This one also tends to be a giant oscillator. You see we kind of double bottom down here. We did touch up the top. We could double top up here before we go back to the bottom. But after touching the top, next likely move back to the bottom. Doesn't have to happen fast, but it will eventually get down there. See it happen over and over. A big pop out right up back here. Lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. Bottom. Popped up again. Lower low. Now we made a high. Do we dip down and make a higher high? Quite possible. This one moves much more slowly than the stocks above the 20-day. Stocks above their 200-day. We did bottom out back here also in April. And we're just kind of hanging in the middle. This very slow moving usually takes 12 to 18 months to go from the bottom to the top, top to the bottom. You know, sometimes it takes even longer. This one, for a long time, I talked about the fact that we were probably going to head to the bottom, and then we did it. Now we're hanging in the middle. Likely we're going back to the top before we come back to the bottom, but you know, sometimes we double hit. So we could potentially come back to the bottom. Make a little lower push before we go higher. That's unclear here where the path is. Probably going higher on the big picture long term. If you're looking out years, probably going to go visit the top. It's just probably what we're going to do. Now look at the futures and the overnight action. What does it tell us? Tells us we got this big pullback here. Tested the 15-minute. Held. Going higher. The path likely to get an extension to the 1448 on that 15-minute time frame there. Does it have to do it? No, we can fail. But somewhere around that 59.63 on the futures, likely where we're going to top out. Maybe even get an extension. And then correct again. That's what I see. NASDAQ already trying to push the highs from yesterday. 21.6, roughly the area right there, 21,600. Russell already pushing up. Caution, this one may be leading. Already at the target. Watch for this one to roll. Could go for an extension. Highly likely to roll back down. CL. Bamming and jamming here. This has the potential setup to get above this high back here and this high back here. It's been a strong resistance in that band right there. Pull that back down. Pull this over here. It's been a relatively strong resistance in that band. Just haven't been able to crack through. That band that we're in is sitting just right at the low we made back in May of 23. This is May of 25, so that was a 2-year ago bottom where we made that support. Now it's resistance. Can we crack through, go higher, or are we going to reject off and take a trip down to lower prices? It's the big question right now. We have potential to go test into it again based on this correction we've got in place. Nothing's clear though. This has been a pretty solid resistance, but we keep hovering right below it. That's price action we've seen a lot where we keep banging on it, then we pop through. Next resistance up right there at the daily roadmap line around 67. This thing doesn't matter anymore. And then we've got this big downtrend that we've had cooking for a few years now that we'll have to contend with if we're actually going to reverse oil higher. Now, it's entirely possible we go visit these much lower levels down here also. GC. Let's pop this thing up a little tighter, a little closer here. This still in line with an A wave down, a B wave up, and potential for a C wave down here. We're just waiting for this thing to actually get moving. So that what this does, it extends this high up a little bit, pulls this on over, extends this high on up a little bit. Everything's still basically the same. Nothing's really changed here, except a few people are like, well, I don't think it's going down. It's funny when other gurus start asking me, it's usually the warning sign. I had some other people asking me yesterday, like about gold. This is the path that I see potentially probable. Now, time is the hardest part. I'm not really predicting time here, but this could last well out into the summer whenever this finally rolls down. So we're looking for this move to get going. It's probably going to be pretty vicious. A wave down, B wave up, C wave down, something like that. Looking for that first move down, that retrace, and that next move down. Yeah, somewhere in this roadmap line area, possibly as low as 2,700, 2,900, 3,000, somewhere in that whole big zone. This would be the most ideal spot to really flush out to. We'll see what happens. This could last well into the fall even. Bitcoin still hovering right in that. You know, this was resistance, 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 resistance. Poked up through, supports. How good is it? Is it good enough to hold us right now and send us higher? Or are we going to have to come back down to this level? Which path? You need to be prepared for both paths, especially for long Bitcoin. Like, do you add more here if we do that? Or do you FOMO in if you sold out and you're waiting on that bounce? I can't tell you what's right for you. And I don't, pretend to, because all trading involves a substantial risk of loss. Past performance not necessarily indicative of future results. This presentation intended to be informational, educational, fun, entertaining, not a recommendation to be buying or selling any financial instrument, including stocks, options, bonds, forex, futures, cryptos, treasuries. You may lose money if you trade them. If you desire personal financial advice, hire and consult a financial advisor, which is not who I am or what I am. I don't profess to be anybody that does anything except get a few predictions right. Ethereum just kind of chopping here. Chopping. Might break down, do a deeper retrace, something back down around 1,800. Could just blast out from here. NKD also churning right in this area. If we break down below that low, we're probably coming down here at the minimum and maybe going for a lower low. This will probably take the US market down with it, just based on a global liquidity type of scale right there. Dollar's still hunting a bottom. Some people saying dollar's doomed to fail and going crushing down lower. When a lot of people kind of get into that thought that we're doomed to fail, we tend to do the opposite. So there's potential for this to be bottoming out right here, especially with this higher low, proving that this is a pretty good support right here. Now, can it break down and go lower? Sure. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. In fact, I had an ideal target here for a couple of years that's a little bit lower than where we are. But it's starting to look like this is a pretty firm support, and we may actually go ripping off, and we could do something like this in the coming years. That's not on a lot of people's radar right now as far as what might happen. Never get that right. It's USD, JPY, dollar yen. I don't know why. Don't ever get that right in my mind. So we have the dollar yen, and what if this breaks? I had all that stuff drawn on here, but what if this is a big correction where we did the first move down, the retrace, and we're about to flush this baby on down. Could come down to back down to that kind of level right there. Maybe. Now we've seen this 3-day roadmap line holding. Did not make a higher high right here so far. It's kind of interesting. We look at this price action. Look back for some kind of previous pattern like this. There's not one. You have this move up, you have this retrace, and very interestingly, this looks like a corrective move up right here with some equality. A little bit of an extension. First move up, second move up, got a little extension. Is the trend down over the long term? And this actually the start of something worse? That would be crazy, right? Where the yen was actually way more valuable. The dollar actually trash compared to the yen. Even with all their even with all their money printing. Or is this just a little consolidation here before we pop on up higher? This goes on up to like 178 possibly. Anyway, I don't play in Forex as much as I used to. Apple, all the Mag 7s have this kind of same first move down, second move down potential. We see that in Apple, we see it in Amazon, we see it in Google, we see it in Meta, even though they popped up a little bit yesterday. Just bring it over. We don't see it on Microsoft. We see this actually completed that pattern back here in April, and we have the potential for this to go ripping out to 486. 486. Possibly 501. NVIDIA has that same potential, and we've had this on the chart since back here in the summer, last summer, basically, when we did the split. We've set up this potential to take it on down, but we decided to go make a new high, and then now we've just brought this on over with the potential to take another dip. And then Tesla even has that same pattern. They need to thread the needle here. We're either about to embark on a large upside, potentially up in the 700, possibly even extending up to 1400, or we're about to take a trip back down to like 100. We do that versus take a little retrace and shoot this baby up. Which one? They're almost equal odds with what we've got going on right here. Now, they do have a paradigm shift in their company and how their company is going to make money coming up this month. Allegedly the 12th, but we'll see. So we got like, 8-9 more days to get there. Then we'll see what happens. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's Cybercab, they're getting into rideshare type situation. Unmanned, and the cost per mile could be 25 cents or lower for a rider. My copywriter was like, well, would anybody actually ride in that if it's competitive with Uber and Lyft? Wouldn't you trust a human driver more? It's like, well, what if the cost is substantially lower, like 25 cents a mile, like basically just more than the cost of the vehicle and depreciation and insurance and electricity. And all of a sudden he's like, whoa, if it's like substantially lower like that, then, nobody will be able to compete with it. So that's the interesting aspect here, is that this could be an upsetting introduction to transportation. This could potentially unlock transportation that's cheaper than public transportation and arguably more efficient, more clean. So it's an interesting, just technologically, it's interesting to me. It's fascinating to me what's about to happen. And if it works or not works. Works, we could see it pop. Not works, we could see it drop. Now, I go pull gainers, everything moving $2 or more up in the market, put it on the gainers list. I pull everything moving $2 or more down in the pre-market and put it on the decliners list. And then I brought 5 of my classic setups, my signature pattern, roadmap line bounces that are potentially valid for entry today. And we'll talk about those here in just a minute. Stick around, we'll get to those. So CEG, making a rip out, probably going to head up to 379. Ferg, ooh, nice potential. Nice potential here. If we stick that close today, could be set on a path for 235. These guys, and they supply a lot of construction type stuff. Signet Jewelers, trying for the gap fill. If they can stick that, we could see this recover. If they don't stick it, we might see this head back down lower again. So far, it hadn't done that path. We came up to the roadmap line and we pushed through, but if we reject back down, it still leaves this path open. TLN. Yeah, they've been on the streets for several days, a key. Last week, we saw nobody sitting in the driver's seat. So they're getting ready to ramp that out. TLN, they were still being monitored by company employees riding in the passenger seat or the rear, but they didn't have anybody sitting in the driver's seat, and no problems, no crashes, no hangups. TLN looks like we might see 271. Credo set up for 93. If we can stick the close above this today. DG, banging earnings, ramp it higher. We still have this giant gap down we got to get through, but this chart is looking bullish. DLTR starting to look bullish. Push on up through. We do have earnings coming up on Wednesday, tomorrow, for Dollar Tree. Which reminds me, tonight, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 30 minutes of awesome. If you're a channel member and you want to come, actually, if you're anybody, channel member, channel subscriber, you want to come chat with me, ask me to check out your charts, come hang out. Channel members get priority. You'll get your chart reviewed first, but I try to hang out and get to everybody. I feel a lot better than I did last week, so hopefully I can do a little better for everybody. BNTX might get this pop, but once we do that, sets up for the bigger continuation lower. GE Veranova at the targets, watch for a retrace. LEU, you could be like, well, I feel like it's going to keep running. How often are your feels right in the market? If you got a good history of feeling right in the market, then keep going on that one. This one also likely to get some retrace action going on after hitting this. course, we could just retrace it back, retest that breakout once again, and then cruise on up higher. That's entirely possible. VST, looks like we are set for 215. MLTX, that's a downtrend, but we're at the bottom of the box, bouncing off. Just more sideways chop for now. Lira, ooh, reverse split, dumpster fire. I wouldn't touch it with your money. MSTR, and getting a little consolidation action. This could be a little baby. I would be very careful here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Could see that make a fifth wave down. If we do that, that's an indication that we might be setting up for a bigger correction. So be very cautious here. If this is done and we go breaking out above this, we can start seeing that bigger upside there. All right, NLR. Looks like we're gonna pop on out. Maybe even a 106, but that is the target vicinity right there, 102. Nice is nicely consolidating here after hitting the target. We could be building a reversal on nice finally. Core weave keeps being ridiculous. 144 upside. Hymns. Yeah, resuming the uptrend, probably going to head on up to 79. ETHU consolidating under the roadmap line. RGLS consolidating at the bottom. PTIR, which is PLTR's chart leveraged. BWTX, another biotech, potentially heading up to 142. Oklo potentially going to cruise on up to 64. And TES at targets, watch for pullback. Dollar Tree we already hit. That's a piece of garbage. Energy, that's a crazy move. Watch for the retrace. May pull back to retest this gap up zone. CAH, Cardinal Health, do a retrace. Talk about a different chart than Humana and UNH. I mean, that's just a night and day difference right there. And Humana, bang at the bottom. UNH, also in the pits, but then you have Cardinal Health rocking and rolling. Even Cigna. I can't remember. Can't remember. CI. Even this one, not the most awesome there. You can say, well, Cardinal Health is a different thing. Yeah, it's medical distributors instead of medical, instead of health insurance, but still healthcare. Compared to a lot of other healthcare, this one's performing. Much other healthcare not performing. I mean, even something like CVS, WBA, all these are lots of healthcare having trouble. TIL, be careful there. Has a history of popping and continuing down the toilet. Core and Main, maybe we're seeing some infrastructure projects going through with Ferguson and Core and Main here. Potential for this to pop on up. Core and Main is like water pipes and fire hydrants. Might see this pop on up in here. Nukes hanging out at the top. That's an ETF on nuclear stuff. So if you just want, you're like, I don't want to try to pick between GE, Veranova, and Oklo, and all those, NRG and URA, and you could just buy some nukes and get some exposure to this stuff. This potentially going to run on up to 54, 57 before we get another pullback. CP. Be careful right here. Pop up. Chopping. If we could break out, we can go higher. But if we don't, we could take this back down in the bubble pattern. If you've never seen my bubble pattern before, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about it. You get this like super optimism, enthusiasm. We go vertical on the chart. Then you get this like pullback and some chop. People are like, oh, it just needs to cool off. We're going to take another run. We're going to break out and go on higher. And then something happens. We break down, cause some anxiety. And then it tends to flush back down to whence it came from. See this happen over and over, all different time frames. So you got to be careful. I call it the bubble because when it, people are like super euphoric. If you're ever sitting there in a position and you're like, man, when this gets a little bit higher, solves all my financial problems, you should GTFO, get the book that sucker out. The market has this beautiful way of triggering that thought in our mind. When you get it, it's usually before you watch it all disappear. You give it all back. So be careful on CEP. XYZ coming up to the roadmap line. Be careful. We left some bottom unfinished business down here. We might take another dip to a lower low. It's possible that this was the bottom. But this is also 1, 2, 3, 4, and could get a fifth. So we need to watch for what happens right here. CCJ, Cameco, probably going to pop on up to 66. It's one of the largest. This is an interesting company. If you really get into what they do, they are one of the largest uranium miners. That's fuel for nuclear plants, nuclear energy. But they also own a substantial portion of Westinghouse, which is a user of uranium products, fuel rods and stuff. So kind of control their own supply chain a little bit. SMR, you guys working on small modular reactors. Get some volatility here. We might see a retrace before we can extend this baby on higher. Leveraged Robinhood. Let's check on Robinhood. Robinhood popping on up. Target 72, 71, 72. VRT. And we need, left a big gap down. Dangerous chart here. This could be like MAG, like a lot of the MAGs where we had the first move down and we get the second move down. As far as decliners go, ASML still consolidating, having a lot of trouble reversing the downtrend here. Shopify might experience a pullback here, and it could be that first move down, second move. We want to see this hold here if we're going higher. If we break down below it, we may come down here like the Mag 7 stuff. SBET, bubble pattern, classic. This thing might chop around in here for a few days. Chop, 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 chop. Set up something like this. And then eventually sometime over here, we're coming back down. And this thing went from, did a reverse split back here after doing several others. Went from $2 all the way up to 123. Maybe like, man, I missed that. And you probably couldn't have held on for that. It gapped up here, hit that, and then very viciously retracing. It still could hit 142, but dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. PSN looks like we're grinding lower. Ugly. Be careful here. All right, setups potentially ready and ripe for today. This is Barrick Mining, formerly GOLD, and it was like ABX before that. Keeps changing its ticker. Set up the entry right there. The upside would be at 21. Right there. Historically, one shy of being statistically significant. 82. That's good. That's, it's not 30, but close. This one, 82. Even with a loss, it's not going to really push that much below 80, so that's good. And this one, not above 2 at 1.6. So it does perform better than the average at 1.2, but I like to see it above 2 if I'm going to put my own money on it in a big way. Now, the last few have played out. Like that one played out pretty quick. This one played out pretty quick. Another one could play out pretty quick. So out of the ones we've looked at lately, this is one of the better ones. Hormel Foods. We've got that high. We got that low. Oh, it's actually tighter. Looking for a smaller move. Got that high. Got that low. Close above. Looking for 32.40 on the upside. It's a pretty smoking one right there, actually. That's 40. That's 90. That's 3. This one's probably going to work out. Probably going to get that 32.44 area. Pause. Pan American Silver Corp. Got the high. We got the low. Got that close above. And 29.32 would be the upside target there. This one, not the best numbers. PEG. That's a downtrend. Not my favorite pattern here where we're arcing off. Doesn't mean it won't work. 85.94. Just, this is more of an average play right there. Ryanair. Got the high, got the low, closed above. Looking for 79.49 and no history, so 75% likely on that one. There you go. There's the 5 plays for today. Looking for my expectation for today. Dive back in here. I think we're probably going to pop up to at least this level and then see what happens today. Do we maintain the breakout level and go higher from there, or do we come back down, retest the roadmap line, possibly go lower? That's kind of the expectation. Just more choppy, drifting higher for now. And we'll be back with you at 5 p.m. If you got requests like Merc, you can come 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll check them all out. We'll hit them all. I'll stay with you until I get done. And hope you have a great day.